Hello, people. This is Mac with Mac Commentary. Today, we're going to touch on a subject that's pretty dear to all people here, most people anyway, Black Americans, and it's called reparations for slavery. Now, as Joe R. Fegan, professor of sociology at Texas A&M University, wrote, a major justification for the government paying reparations directly to individuals or establishing other forms of compensation, such as investment in majority Black communities. He says it lies in the harsh reality of the labor stolen from millions of enslaved people from 1619 to 1865. That justification extends to many more millions severely oppressed by the next century and a half, whether through racist segregation laws or informal discrimination. Authorities did nothing to stop. Now, the first slaves were Africans that were enslaved were taken to Jamestown, Virginia, where the oppression of Black people by whites has been embedded in America's economic, political, and educational and other institutions. Now, slavery lasted for over 250 years. About 60% of U.S. history include colonial times, counting the nearly century-long Jim Crow segregation of African Americans. Officially sanctioned racial oppression encompassed more than 80% of U.S. history to date. The political scientist Thomas Kramer calculated the hours worked by enslaved Black workers between 1776 and the official end of slavery. He estimated this uncompensated labor totaled between 5.9 and $14.2 trillion in current dollars. And as in his book, Professor Fegan book called Racist America, he stated $1 trillion more in wealth was effectively stolen from Black Americans, not just because of enslavement prior to 1776, but during the Jim Crow era, through employment discrimination and decades of bureaucratic finagling that caused them to lose farmland. Now, Fegan estimates that the total cost to Black Americans over 4 centuries of slavery, Jim Crow laws, and more contemporary discrimination to be in the $10 to $20 trillion range. That's potentially as big as the nation's annual economic output. Now, the assumption that these debts are owed by and to people now deceased ignores all the money, property, and other wealth white Americans alive today inherited from their forebears, including slave owners, and many others responsible for depriving Blacks of economic and education opportunities through discrimination. The latter included white overseers, sheriffs, and merchants. Most whites can trace their roots back at least 3 generations, with many going back between 4 and 20 generations. That's longer than most of African Americans have had, where they've had at least officially fairly equal economic opportunities, at most for 2 generations. This argument also ignores the benefits white people reaped from the large-scale discrimination suffered by African Americans, whose labor was underpaid or stolen for most of U.S. history. Millions of people, many still alive, endured brutal violence and economic discrimination under legal segregation. What's more, housing equity. What homeowners possess after subtracting their mortgages is a main repository of U.S. family wealth. Fegan stated that Jonathan Kaplan, a philosopher, and political scientist Andrew Vales argued that the decades-long housing discrimination that stopped most African Americans from building significant home equity justifies the payment of major reparations. White implemented government-owned home ownership programs after World War II, including mortgage programs for veterans, discriminated on a large scale against blacks. These government programs enabled many millions of white families to move into the middle class. The children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of these whites have since inherited wealth due to the ensuing growth in the value of their housing. In contrast, black families usually endured housing discrimination after World War II. They were unable to obtain mortgages and were barred from restricted covenants from buying homes in white areas where housing values rose. Today's wealth gap between white and black Americans is substantially the result of government-supported housing and employment discrimination. The median net worth of black families is less than 15% of that of white families, according to the Federal Reserve. Now, this is clearly seen by some of the more wealthier families, like, for instance, the Rockefellers. As I stated in another video, John D. Rockefeller wealth is estimated somewhere around $370 billion. And it supports over 200 of current family members. Now I have Bob on me, and Bob has some ideas and some information to share along these lines about reparation. How are you doing today, Bob?
I'm doing just fine, Mac. Thank you for asking, and thank you for inviting me on your show. The history that you just articulated by these intellectual philosophers, it's pretty well known. It's been written for years. But the reality for me is that I don't believe black people want reparations. I think that this is just an intellectual exercise, a political exercise that the so-called leadership and intellectuals discuss from time to time and draw up commissions like the National African American Reparations Commission to assuage their guilt feelings about seeing black people picking up bottles and filling plastic bags as they drive down the cars from their drive-by in cars from their comfortable neighborhoods, blacks and whites. Because I was informed just several days ago about the fact that there had been a poll taken as what were the most critical issues that black people thought, and reparations was at the top of the list, but only 57% of those people that were in the 4,000 group funded polled thought that reparations was significant. That surprised me. I mean, it really surprised me. I thought it would have been 100%. And I've been thinking about that, and I've come to realize that we don't really want reparations. Black people don't want that. All we want to do is be able to complain about the fact that the slave master has bamboozled us out of all this wealth, and that gives us something to talk about when we go to church, or when we're at our clubs, or when the white man is the cause of my problem, the former slave master. So I read through that dark proposal, a 10-point proposal, and not one place in there did it talk about the money. And I got to thinking about that. I said, well, let's go back to 1600, Bob, and multiply the number of years. Let's just take 400 years and multiply that times 365 days. And that comes to about 140,000 days for native blacks in America that would be entitled to these reparations if they were granted. And I said, just give them $1 for every day. That would be $140,000. Because I noticed in the aggregate number that this professor whom you were quoting, he never said how much should be given to each individual native slave. They don't talk about that. But let's just take my number, 140 at $1 a day. Let's say that their struggle was worth $1 a day. That would come to $140,000. That's a fairly nice sum of money. It'll get you a McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese and big fries at a McDonald's. And I don't want to be too cynical about this, but my point is this. Black people do not want reparations. There's a meeting going on right now between the President of the United States and the Congressional Black Caucus, our leadership, Black leadership. I would be willing to bet you my bottom dollar and the national news comes out at 6:00 this evening, there won't be 1 point raised by those Black leaders about reparations to the President of the United States.
Well, Bob, they're
not going to talk about Field Order 15,
right?
That General Sherman said we should get 40 acres and a mule and $100 bill. So I'm not at all dismayed by what I read and what I hear, and I'm not angry about it because I know that this is just whistling Dixie and grabbing at windmills. It's never going to happen, but it's a comfortable conversation.
Well, Bob, a long time ago, I was told never to use never. So never is not in my vocabulary as far as what may happen, because whatever I said, this won't happen or that won't happen, it has happened. And the way the world is set up, things will happen. But going back to one of the things that you brought out about, as Fegan was talking about, the trillions of dollars that the reparations, that the descendants of slaves deserve from their labor. Well, I believe Robert Johnson, the Black American billionaire, he came out a year or two ago during the COVID period. I think it was during 2021 when he stated that blacks should have reparations of $24 trillion, where each person should get $350,000. He came up with that, and with that figure right there. So that his amount of 24 trillion is almost in line with what Fegan's talks about here, 20 trillion. So I think that a significant point to be noted here is that it has to be a commission has to be set aside. I mean, a real commission, not included. I mean, somebody selected, not handpicked, but somebody selected by the people who will decide what type of reparations that blacks should get. And some people have different opinions about that. They feel that reparations should be in the form of more education, housing, and medical and different things like that. But in my opinion, I think reparations, just as you probably do, it should be in the form of monetary compensation for all
cash money. cash money,
Exactly. And
greenbacks.
and no matter, some people say, oh, they just gonna go and give it right back. Well, it's their money. Let them do whatever they want to do with it, you know.
Right. If I want to take my money and go out and buy cases of Thunderbird wine
Yeah,
or boy wine, that's my business.
that's
It's my money.
exactly. And that's what they should be. I agree that they should be coming up with something along the line of what Bob Johnson proposed, you know. Whether it's, and I believe they did something like this in California recently, where they come up with I think it was $120,000 per person, I believe. I'm not quite, don't quote me on that, but I think they still in the process of determining that, or they haven't really come up with a conclusive amount yet. But this brings us to the present day, though, Bob. How this country treat us. I mean, like, for instance, you go back and look at how the slaves in the cotton plantations in the garment industry, how this garment industry really fueled the growth of this economy, and banks like you all your big banks, major banks in this country, they were all started through through slavery. I mean, people would go to the farmers would go to the bank to borrow money to buy slaves, or to buy more land or whatever, and that the slaves would work on, and all this labor was free, Bob. And what have
Well, back, look. That's why I said at the outset, the history is already. There's all kinds of books and libraries that you can dredge up the kind of information. The question
well,
is,
I mean, the thing is, Bob, is not. Wait a minute.
Wait. Let me finish my point. The question in my mind is, what is the country going to do about it? And they haven't. What year was that Bob Johnson came up with that number?
Let's go back. Let's go back to what you were saying about that the blacks do not want this. Well, you know, sometimes, Bob, a lot of times people don't want something that they don't understand, and this is the whole purpose of what I'm talking about now, is through an educational process. If people understood, you saying there's a lot of books out there. Sure enough, there's a lot of books, but how many people go out there and read those books? And so the more knowledge that people have, the more understanding they have, then they would understand, hey, yeah, we do deserve that. And that's what we are trying to do. The more people talk about this reparation, and the more people get on board with it. And that's the bottom line there. And that's what I'm
show you my bottom line. Let me suggest my bottom line. People, I think if there was a national effort like there is during the election times, that came out and said, because I think people can understand this. If you said, we're going to give each one of you $340,000 cash money, do you understand that? And here's what we want to do. We want to ask each one of you, all you native blacks in this country that are former slaves, you are descendants of former slaves. We want you to take a poll and tell us, and get Gallup, get the most reputable polling system in the world to take this poll. We want all 30 to 40 million of you blacks here in America that are considered blacks to take this poll. We're going to give you $340,000. Can you understand that? It doesn't have to be all intellectual. It's a very simple question.
Well, right. Well, that's exactly what you have to get that information out there and let them understand that some people, you go and say, hey, I'm gonna give you a $350,000 for slavery. They say, well, I wasn't a slave back then. Why do I deserve it? See, they don't. You have to make it intellectual. You have to make them understand why they deserve this. A lot of them don't think they do. Just like McConnell said. He said, well, I wasn't a slaveholder back then. I don't owe anybody anything. We tried to make it right. We passed the Civil Rights Bill. We tried to do all of that, but he didn't say anything about him inheriting a big farm there in Kentucky, horse farm, and all of that stuff that was probably gotten through slavery. I mean, he didn't say anything, well, I should give that back. He didn't say that, did he? So that's the same thing. A lot of blacks don't even understand that because they still ignorant to that fact that why we should have slavery. You got people in Congress right there, Black Caucus people. They probably some in there don't understand it. You don't have 100% on board with it. I'm sure you don't. But that's why there are a lot of people beginning to talk about this, and the more and more people talk about it, as someone pointed out to me, the more the people will adhere and gravitate toward this type of reparations for slavery, even though they were not there, but their ancestors. And then and most people don't realize, everybody think, oh, I can pull myself up by my bootstrap. Well, I tell you what. Well, did Biden say that when they given Ukraine's pensions to come over here, SSI, to come over here to this country and be able to draw Social Security supplemental benefits? I mean, hey, wait a minute now. What did they do for this country? What did they contribute to this country? So that's why Black people have to understand what is going on here. Now, he just recently signed a bill here where he's giving away another, this $1.7 trillion government funding bill. That includes $47 billion in additional aid for Ukraine, and which they've already, based on the one other, let me see, what was the name of that? Well, in the past, they've already given, I think it's the Council of Foreign Relations points out that they had given up until November 20th, 2022, they had given 48 billion. So when you take that and add that together, you're talking about $100 billion they're giving over there to a country that has nothing to do with this country, except for some politicians and business people who want to sell arms over there and help the defense manufacturers in this country.
So the reality is, that country is a white country. Those are white people. And I don't like to put stuff on racial terms. I don't like to do that. But the reality, see, I have to deal with what is real. And the reality is that those people, white people, are going to always get the biggest slice of the cake. They got it from the time that they gave away billions of acres of land, like you were just talking about McConnell's family in Kentucky. That money went to white people. It didn't go to blacks. And it's never going to go to blacks. And I'll use the word never in terms of my lifetime. Now that I've become intelligent enough to see what's really going on, and I'm no longer deceived by the intellectual masturbation that goes on in these intellectual circles.
Well, the U.S. already also provided an additional $150 million to the Palestinians. They plan between 2021 and 2024, they plan to give the Palestinians over $500 million. I don't know whether they white or black, or white or colored. I don't know what color they are. I don't know when they get in this country what they are, but over there, I don't know what color they go by. So, but each year, and I don't know what Israel is either, but each year the U.S. gives 3.8 billion plus to Israel. That's annually. I mean, if the blacks don't wake up to this, if they're not educated to this here, how are they going to go out there and protest on something they don't understand? And the fact is, you don't have any leadership in the black community to go out there and try to get them acclimated to what is actually going on in this country. And until we can educate blacks that reparation is something that we need. For instance, if let's say the U.S. decides to do this because we've become really vocal and we got these Congressional Black Caucus people in there all up in Biden's face and say we need reparations. I know it'd be hard with the Republicans, but let's say that by some crook imagination that it does happen, and you get $20 billion that goes to the blacks, and then cash I'm talking about. Okay, 10%, say 10% of the people take that 20 billion, they go over to Africa with it. That's $2 trillion that they go over there with and invest in Africa. And you'll be amazed at what can happen on that continent with $2 trillion to invest.
Wait a minute. Back 20 billion, 10% of 20 billion.
I said 20 trillion.
Huh?
I said 20 trillion.
Oh, I thought you said 20 billion.
No.
Yeah, that would be $2 trillion. Yeah. Well, again, I mean, these are pipe dreams, and
Bob, I hate you. I hate for you to really think of this as a pipe dream, but because if you continue to talk about something, it'll take on a life of its own, just like the civil rights movement did. It took on a life of its own. And what we have to do now, we have to find the right people that have to step forward to be in a leadership position, and they have to be protected so they won't be taken out like Dr. King, Malcolm X, and others have been taken out. And that's what needs to be done. I'm not trying to come up with something here just for some talking points. I'm trying to bring out something that can happen in reality, and it can happen. But it takes the village though to do it. And how do you get the village to understand that? Through teaching, through talking about it, through conversations. And that's what we have to do, Bob. And even though it may not happen, but there's a high probability that it can happen and it will happen. But I'm just talking about another thing. How are we giving so much money to all other different groups? Like the Pakistanis. I don't think you call them white. I'm telling you, one of the things, when Obama was in office, he gave over $70 billion to the Pakistanis. And you better believe that that Biden is doing the same thing today. And not only are the Ukrainians getting the SSI, but you got the Iraqis are getting SSI. The Afghanistans are getting SSI. To me, that's all reparations. You go back and look at the Japanese got reparations. I mean, the Indians got reparations. Even the Holocaust victims got American reparations from Obama, $12 million, so they could die with dignity, as was stated back then. But what about all the blacks that have died, that's suffered through all this, as was articulated here by Fegan in his article, all the blacks that's died through that time period of discrimination, Jim Crow, etc. How many died without any dignity? Many. So I think we should continue to focus in on reparations, and I think we all should be fighting for that, Bob, and not making it seem like it's something that can't happen.
Well, as I say, it hasn't happened in my lifetime, and my life is not over yet. So perhaps, it will happen as I continue to keep an eye on what's going on. But I'm not optimistic because as I listen to you talking about the amount of money that's given to these other people, the Pakistanis, the Palestinians, the Israelis, and I'm thinking to myself, well, how during that period of time, and since it started, let's just say it started 10 years ago. We know it's been longer than that, but let's just say it started 10 years ago up until 2023. how much during that period of time have they given to Native blacks? I don't know, but I'm sure there must be some kind of numbers around to show that, when we were trying to help out the Pakistanis and the Israelis and the Palestinians, we were also helping the people in this country whose backs this place was built on, and put that money together for those groups. We're going to give them, for every dollar that we're giving a Pakistani, we're going to give the American native black 10 cents. Or for every dollar that we're giving Israelis, we're going to give them 5 cents. Or for every dollar that we're giving whatever other group, we're going to give them 10 cents. I don't think that those kind of numbers exist, because that kind of thinking doesn't exist.
What numbers doesn't exist, Bob?
The thinking of the fact that we're giving this money to these other people, and we're not giving anything to these people who on whose backs this place was built and made available the money that we're giving away to others on a proportional basis. I'm not saying dollar for dollar. I just said if we're going to give Pakistanis a dollar, then we're going to give this black descendant of slaves 10 cents. That's
Well,
just 10 cents on a dollar. But there's no record that exists that kind of thoughtfulness has gone into helping out the people in this country. And that's why I say it's never going to happen. And I stand by that.
okay, that's good. But I tell you what, Bob, when the last, why don't we all do this? And why don't all the people out there that get the message, and the other YouTubers out there who get the message out, why don't we have all promote that all blacks write their congressman demanding reparations, and especially the Black Caucus? That's why they are in there, to go to carry out the will of the people. And so, if you have you written your congressman or senator about reparations, Bob?
No, not at all. Because I wouldn't. I think that's a very admirable idea to do what you just suggested, but I haven't done it. But I can do it.
Well, I think well, that's one of the things that I've written, just like I've written about some other things to these to my representatives out there, and they always send me a letter back, and you can tell it's a form letter. But I guess if they got enough of them that's about the same thing, then they won't look so much as a form letter. They say, hey,
Well, a form. There's nothing wrong with a form letter. The people that you just suggested we should write to our congresspeople, it could be a very simple form letter.
no,
It's
no,
a
no, I'm
dear,
not talking
dear.
about it. I'm
Let
not
me finish
talking about.
my point, Mac. Let me
I'm
finish
saying,
my point. The dear Congressman, I, Robert,
I'm not talking about what we write. I'm talking about what they write back to me. What
I
I write to
understood.
them.
I understood what you said, Mac.
Yeah.
I understood that. What I'm saying is, I want to endorse your recommendation that all the people that are listening on YouTube, all that will benefit from reparations, write a form letter, and the form letter could simply say this: I, Robert, whatever my name is, dear Congressman or dear Mr. President, I am a native black, and I am demanding, not requesting, demanding that I receive. Let's just, and this is the form letter for everybody: $1 million in reparations, and sign your name to it and send that to them. It's not a. It doesn't have to be flowered with intellectual passes. It can be very simple, and if they start getting these kinds of millions of letters from people that want reparations, maybe they'll think about it. Say, damn, these are form letters. It's the same form letter from coming from California. It's coming from Nevada. It's coming from Texas. I even got one from New Hampshire. These are form letters from these people out here who are tired of this bullshit that every year is wreaked upon them. But we won't do that because we do not want reparations. That's my point.
Okay, Bob. Well, I appreciate that your comment there. I'll let you have that last comment there. That we do not want reparations, but I'm gonna leave this comment. We want reparations. We do want reparations. So, so people, I want to thank everybody. Bob, I want to thank you especially for coming on today. It's been great talking to you. And people,
Yes.
I want you to subscribe to this channel right here so Bob and I can come back to you with more information regarding reparations and other things that's affecting the people in the diaspora of uh, of uh, of the Africa. Okay, have a good day, Bob. You have any last goodbyes you want to say?
No, Mac, it's been a very stimulating conversation. I've enjoyed it. And let's keep doing it because maybe we can wake somebody up if we shout loud enough.
Okay, okay, people. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thanks, and have a great day, Bob.
Thank you, and you as well.